Pointed and Five-Pointed Stars. Volume 3, Number 2, November, 1881. Our authorities for representing the pentagram or the five-pointed star as the microcosm, and the six-pointed double triangle as the macrocosm, are all the best-known Western Kabbalists, medieval and modern. Eliphas Levi, Abby Constant, and, we believe, Conrad, one of the greatest occultists of the past ages, give their reasons for it. In Hargrave Jennings' Rosicrucians, the correct cut of the microcosm with man in the center of the pentagram is given. There is no objection whatever to publish their speculations, save one, the lack of space in our journal, as it would necessitate an enormous amount of explanations to make their esoteric meaning clear. But room will always be found to correct a few natural misconceptions which may arise in the minds of some of our readers, owing to the necessary brevity of our editorial notes. So long as the question raised provokes no discussion to show the interest taken in the subject, these notes touch but superficially upon every question. The excellence of the above published paper, The Six-Pointed and Five-Pointed Stars, by Krishna Shankar Lal Shankar, and the many valuable remarks contained in it, afford us now an opportunity for correcting such errors in the author's mind. As understood in the West by the real Kabbalists, spirit and matter have their chief symbolical meaning in the respective colors of the two interlaced triangles, and relate in no way to any of the lines which bind the figures themselves. To the Kabbalist and Hermetic philosopher, everything in nature appears under a triune aspect. Everything is a multiplicity and trinity in unity, and is so represented by him symbolically in various geometrical figures. God geometrizes, says Plato. The three Kabbalistic faces are the three lights and the three lives of Ayin Suf, the Para-Brahman of the Westerns, which is also called the central invisible sun. The universe is his spirit, soul, and body, his three emanations. This triune nature, the purely spiritual, the purely material, and the middle nature, or imponderable matter, of which man's astral soul is composed, is represented by the equilateral triangle, whose three sides are equal because these three principles are diffused throughout the universe in equal proportions, and, the one law in nature being perfect equilibrium, are eternal and coexistent. The Western symbology, then, with a trifling variation, is identically the same as that of the Aryans. Names may vary, and trifling details may be added, but the fundamental ideas are the same. The double triangle, representing symbolically the macrocosm, or great universe, contains in itself the ideas of unity, of duality, as shown in the two colors. And the two triangles, the universe of spirit and that of matter, of trinity, of the Pythagorean tetractys, the perfect square, up to the dodecagon and the dodecahedron. The ancient Chaldean Kabbalists, the masters and inspirers of the Jewish Kabbalah, were neither the anthropomorphizers of the Old Testament nor those of the present day. Their Ayin Suf, the endless and the boundless, has a form and then has no form, says the Zohar, and forthwith explains the riddle by adding, the invisible assumed a form when he called the universe into existence. That is to say, the deity can only be seen and conceived of in objective nature, pure pantheism. The three sides of the triangles represent to the occultists, as they do to the Aryans, spirit, matter, and the middle nature, the latter identical in its meaning with space. Hence also the creative, preservative, and destructive energies, typified in the three lights. The first 8 infuses intelligent, conscious life throughout the universe, thus answering to the creative energy. The second 8 incessantly produces forms out of pre-existent cosmic matter within the cosmic circle, and hence is the preservative energy. The third 8 produces the whole universe of gross physical matter. As the latter keeps gradually receding from the central spiritual 8, its brightness wanes, and it becomes darkness or evil, leading to death. Hence, it becomes the destructive energy, which we find ever at work on forms and shapes, the temporary and the changing, the 3 Kabbalistic faces of the ancient, who has no face, or the Aryan deities called respectively Brahma, Vishnu, and Rudra or Shiva. The double triangle of the Kabbalists is enclosed. The Book of Splendor, written by Simeon ben Iochai in the 1st century BC. The double triangle of the Kabbalists is enclosed within a circle represented by a serpent swallowing its own tail, the Egyptian emblem of the eternity, and sometimes by a simple circle. See the Theosophical Seal. The only difference we can see between the Aryan and the Western symbology of the double triangle, according to the author's explanation, lies in his omission to notice the profound and special meanings in that which, if we understand him rightly, he terms the zenith and the zero. With the Western Kabbalists, the apex of the white triangle loses itself in the zenith, the world of pure immateriality or unalloyed spirit, while the lower angle of the black triangle, pointing downward towards the nadir, shows, to use a very prosaic phrase of the medieval Hermetists, pure, or rather impure matter, as the gross purgations of the celestial fire, spirit, drawn into the vortex of annihilation. That lower world, where forms and shapes and conscious life disappear to be dispersed and return to the mother fount, cosmic matter. So with the central point and the central cavity, which, according to the Puranic teaching, is considered to be the seat of the Avyakta Brahma, or unmanifested deity. The occultists, who generally draw the figure thus, instead of a simple central geometrical point, which, having neither length, breadth, nor thickness, represents the invisible central sun, the light of the unmanifested deity, often place the crux ansata, the handled cross, or the Egyptian Tau, at the zenith of which, instead of a mere upright line, they substitute a circle, the symbol of limitless, uncreated space. Thus modified, this cross has nearly the same significance as the mundane cross of the ancient Egyptian Hermetists, a cross within a circle. Therefore, it is erroneous to say that the editorial note stated that the double triangle represented spirit and matter only, for it represents so many emblems that a volume would not suffice to explain them. Says our critic, the meaning is the same in the Egyptian pyramid. A French archaeologist of some renown, Dr. Heboud, shows the great culture of the Egyptians, 5000 BC, by stating upon various authorities that there were at that time no less than 30 or 40 colleges of the initiated priests who studied occult sciences and practical magic. If, as you say, the double triangle is made to represent universal spirit and matter only, the objection that 2 sides, or any 2 things, cannot form a triangle, or that a triangle cannot be made to represent one, spirit alone, or matter alone, as you appear to have done by the distinction of black and white, remains unexplained. Believing that we have now sufficiently explained some of the difficulties, and shown that the Western Kabbalists always had regard to the Trinity in unity, and vice versa, we may add that the Pythagoreans explained away the objection, and especially insisted upon by the writer of the above words, about 2,500 years ago. The sacred number of that school, whose cardinal idea was that there existed a permanent principle of unity beneath all the forces and phenomenal changes of the universe, did not include the number 2 or the duad among the others. The Pythagoreans refused to recognize that number, even as an abstract idea, precisely on the ground that in geometry it was impossible to construct a figure with only 2 straight lines. It is obvious that for symbolical purposes, the number cannot be identified with any circumscribed figure, whether a plane or a solid, geometric figure. And thus, as it could not be made to represent a unity in a multiplicity, as any other polygonal figure can, it could not be regarded as a sacred number. The number 2, represented in geometry by a double horizontal line, and in the Roman numerals by a double perpendicular line, and a line having length but not breadth or thickness. Another numeral had to be added to it before it could be accepted. It is only in conjunction with number 1, thus becoming the equilateral triangle, that it can be called a figure. It thus becomes evident why, in symbolizing spirit and matter, the alpha and omega in the cosmos, the Hermetists had to use the 2 triangles interlaced, both a trinity in unity, making the one typifying spirit white with chalk, and the other typifying matter black with charcoal. To the question, what do the 2 other angles of the white triangle signify, if the one white point ascending heavenward symbolizes spirit, we answer that, according to the Kabbalists, the 2 lower points signify spirit falling into generation, i.e., the pure divine spark, already mixed with the matter of the phenomenal world. The same explanation holds good for the 2 base angles of the black triangle, the 3rd points showing respectively the progressive purification of spirit and the progressive grossness of matter. Again, to say that any thought of upward or downward in the sublime idea of the cosmos seems not only revolting but unreal, is to object to nothing abstract being symbolized in a concrete image. Then why not make away with all the signs altogether, including that of Vishnu, and with all the learned Puranic explanations thereof given by the writer? And why should the Kabbalistic idea be more revolting than that of death, devourer, time, the latter word being a synonym of endless eternity, represented by a circle surrounding the double triangle? Strange inconsistency, and one, moreover, which clashes entirely with the rest of the article. If the writer has not met anywhere with the idea of one triangle being white and the other black, it is simply because he has never studied, nor probably ever seen, the writings and illustrations of Western Kabbalists. The above explanations contain the key to the Pythagorean general formula of unity in multiplicity, the one evolving the many, and pervading the many and the whole. The mystic Decad, 1 plus 24 minus 3 plus 4 equals 10, expresses the entire idea. It is not only far from being revolting, but it is positively sublime. The one is the deity, the 2 matter. The figure so despised by them as matter per se can never be a conscious unity. The 3 or triangle, combining monad and duad, partaking of the nature of both, becomes the triad or the phenomenal world. The tetrad or sacred tetractys, the form of perfection with the Pythagoreans, expresses at the same time the emptiness of all, Maya, while the decad, or sum of all, involves the entire cosmos. The universe is the combination of 1,000 elements, and yet the expression of a single element, absolute harmony or spirit, a chaos to the sense, a perfect cosmos to reason, we say in Isis Unveiled. Pythagoras learned his philosophy in India, hence the similarity in the fundamental ideas of the ancient Brahmanial initiates and the Pythagorists. And when in defining the Shatkan, the writer says it represents the great universe, Brahmanda, the whole endless, Malaakasha, with all the planetary and stellar worlds contained in it. He only repeats, in other words, the explanation given by Pythagoras and the Hermetic philosophers of the hexagonal star, or the double triangle, as shown above. Nor do we find it very difficult to fill up the gap left in our brief note in the August number as to the remaining 3 points of the 2 triangles, and the 3 sides of each element of the double triangle, or the circle surrounding the figure. As the Hermetists symbolized everything visible and invisible, they could not fail to symbolize the macrocosm in its completeness. The Pythagoreans, who included in their decad the entire cosmos, held the number 12 in still higher reverence, as it represented the sacred tetractys multiplied by 3, which gave a trinity of perfect squares called tetrads. The Hermetic philosophers or occultists, following in their steps, represented this number 12 in the double triangle, the great universe or the macrocosm, as shown in this figure, and included in it the pentagram or the microcosm, called by them the little universe. Dividing the 12 letters of the outer angles into 4 groups of triads, or 3 groups of tetrads, they obtained the dodecagon, a regular geometric polygon bounded by 12 equal sides and containing 12 equal angles, which symbolized with the ancient Chaldeans the 12 great gods, and with the Hebrew Kabbalists the 10 Sephiroth, or creative powers of nature, emanated from Sephira, divine light, herself, the chief Sephiroth, and emanation from Hakoma, the supreme or unmanifested wisdom, and Ayun Suf, the endless, viz., 3 groups of triads of the Sephiroth, and a 4th triad composed of Sephira, Ayun Suf, and Hakoma, the supreme wisdom which cannot be understood by reflection, and which lies concealed within and without the cranium of long face, the uppermost head of the upper triangle, forming the 3 Kabbalistic faces, making up the 12. Moreover, the 12 figures give 2 squares, or the double tetractys, representing in the Pythagorean symbology the 2 worlds, the spiritual and the physical. The 18 inner and 6 central angles yield, besides 24, twice the sacred macrocosmic number. Also the 24 divine unmanifested powers. These it would be impossible to enumerate in so short a space. Besides, it is far more reasonable in our days of skepticism to follow the hint of Iamblichus, who says that the divine powers always felt indignant with those who rendered manifest the composition of the icosahedron, those who delivered the method of inscribing in a sphere the dodecahedron, one of the 5 solid figures in geometry, contained by 12 equal and regular pentagons, the secret Kabbalistic meaning of which our opponents would do well to study. In addition to all this, as shown in the double triangle above, the pentagram in the center gives the key to the meaning of the Hermetic philosophers and the Kabbalists. So well known and widespread is this double sign that it may be found over the entrance door of the Lakhang temples containing Buddhist images and statues, in every gongpa, lamasery, and often over the relic cupboard, called in Tibet Dung Ting. The medieval Kabbalists give us in their writings the key to its meaning. Man is a little world inside the great universe, Paracelsus teaches, and again a microcosm within the macrocosm, like a fetus. He is suspended by his 3 principal spirits in the matrix of the universe. These 3 spirits are described as double, the spirit of the elements, terrestrial body, and vital principle. 1. The spirit of the elements, terrestrial body, and vital principle. 2. The spirit of the stars, sidereal or astral body, and the will governing it. 3. The spirits of the spiritual world, the animal and the spiritual souls. The 7th principle being an almost immaterial spirit, or the divine agoides, Atma, represented by the central point, which corresponds to the human navel. This seventh principle is the personal God of every man, say the Old Western and Eastern occultists. Therefore it is that the explanations given by our critic of the Shetkan and Panchkan rather corroborate than destroy our theory. Speaking of the 5 triangles composed of 5 times 5, or 25 points, he remarks of the pentagram, that is, a number otherwise corresponding with the 25 elements making a living human creature. Now we suppose that by elements the writer means just what the Kabbalists say when they teach that the emanations of the 24 divine unmanifested powers, the unexisting or central point being the 25th, make a perfect human being. But without disputing upon the relative value of the words element and emanation, and strengthened moreover, as we find the above sentence, by the author's additional remark that the entire figure of the microcosm, the inner world of individual living being, is a figure which is the sign of Brahma, the deified creative energy. In what respect, we ask, does the above sentence so much clash with our statement that some proficients in Hermetic philosophy and Kabbalists regard the 5 points of the pentagram as representing the 5 cardinal limbs of the human body? We are no ardent disciple or follower of the Western Kabbalists, yet we maintain that in this they are right. If the 25 elements represented by the 5-pointed star make up a living human creature, then these elements are all vital, whether mental or physical. And the figure symbolizing creative energy gives the more force to the Kabbalistic idea. Every one of the 5 gross elements, earth, water, fire, air or wind, and ether, enters into the composition of man, and whether we say 5 organs of action, or the 5 limbs, or even the 5 senses, it means all one and the same thing, if we would refrain from hair-splitting. Most undoubtedly, the proficients could explain their claim at least as satisfactorily as the writer who controverts and denies it, in explaining his own. In the Codex Nazarxus, the most Kabbalistic of books, the Supreme King of Light, and the chief Eon, Mano, emanates the 5 eons. He himself with the Lord Ferho, the unknown formless life, of which he is an emanation, making up the 7, which typify again the 7 principles in man, the 5 being purely material and semi-material, and the higher 2 almost immaterial and spiritual. 5 refulgent rays of light proceed from each of the 7 eons, 5 of these shooting through the head, the 2 extended hands, and the 2 feet of man represented in the 5-pointed star, one enveloping him as with a mist, and the 7th settling like a bright star over his head. The illustration may be seen in several old books upon the Codex Nazarxus and the Kabbalah. What wonder, then, that since electricity or animal magnetism streams most powerfully from the 5 cardinal limbs of man, and since the phenomena of what is now called mesmeric force had been studied in the temples of ancient Egypt and Greece, and mastered as it may never hope to be mastered in our age of idiotic and a priori denial, the old Kabbalists and philosophers who symbolized every power in nature should, for reasons perfectly evident for those who know anything of the arcane sciences of the mysterious relations which exist between numbers, figures, and ideas, have chosen to represent the 5 cardinal limbs of man, the head, the 2 arms, and the 2 legs, in the 5 points of the pentagram. Eliphas Levi, the modern Kabbalist, goes as far, if not farther, than his ancient and medieval brethren, for he says in his Dogma et Ritual de la Haute Magi, page 175, the Kabbalistic use of the pentagram can determine the countenance of unborn infants, and an uninitiated woman might give to her son the features of Nereus or Achilles, or those of Louis XIV or Napoleon. The astral light of the Western occultists is the Akasha of the Hindus. Many of the latter will not study its mysterious correlations, either under the guidance of initiated Kabbalists or that of their own initiated Brahmins, preferring to Prajna Paramita their own conceit. And yet both exist and are identical.